I want to thank everybody for hanging in there so far. And I also want to apologize in advance during our COVID times. We may have some technical difficulties and you may hear an airplane, a dog crying, and a lawn guy in the back. But if you need me to speak up, I will. We are the Stantec team and we have the opportunity to work with the Fort Bend community. And I just want to introduce ourselves and our agenda. First, we'll kind of introduce ourselves and then talk about some of the important things that came out of our workshop with Fort Bend, and then talk about the proposed recommendations and how we can implement some of those recommendations, and then also some actionable next steps that we can go forward with. So this is our team. We put together an interdisciplinary team of architects, transportation planners, urban planners, placemaking experts, and an artist. And during our community workshop, we had the opportunity to sit down and talk through what some of the assets, some of the apparent strengths, and some of the challenges are within the community. And one of the strongest things that we heard was that the community itself has the three strong assets: the culture, the community, and the collective dollar, as well as the real estate that Fort Bend is currently within. And our team, we like to think of this, and what we understood was essentially we need to focus on cultural and economic resilience. And the way that we focus on resilience and think about resilience is really in this metaphor of a lily pad. And when you see a lily pad, you see it floating on the top of the water, when in reality, it's not independent and it's not just floating by itself. It's supported by administration, it's supported by sponsorships, partnerships, different residents in the community, different stakeholders. And so the lily pad it's an asset, a critical asset within the community, where you pour your resources and the collective dollar and partner with different entities in order to make it stronger, so that the community itself can rely on this lily pad and rely on this critical asset in challenging times, and also in times of disaster and things like that. So we applied this lens and this framework to our proposals and recommendations. So these are, we're going into some of the opportunities that we identified. We went out and we took pictures and kind of got a feel for the area of Fort Bend, and what we wanted to see for ourselves, like what the assets were, and what interventions we could place inside of the community. And so in this overall map, what we're looking at is different opportunities that you see. Those are the large orange dots, numbered dots, where the schools are, a transit map and mobility plan that shows the connectivity and how you get to those different opportunities that we've identified. So opportunity number one of the first things that we heard from the community was that there was a desire for uniformity and also for future developments to match and kind of give back to the neighborhoods that they're within. And one of the developments that came up in talking to them were the warehouses at Fondren, that at one point it was a golf course, and then a new development came, and it was there were more opportunities to interface with the residents, but the buildings themselves are somewhat lacking in connecting to the neighborhood around it and the residents. So these are the existing warehouses as they are. And then as we imagine it with more guidelines, like stronger landscape guidelines, opportunities for public art, opportunities for market, this is what we imagine it to be. And one of the things that we're thinking about in terms of a solution is using these warehouses as an opportunity to make more public space, and encouraging outdoor sales, outdoor eating, sort of activating that public realm. The second opportunity really speaks to the community's desire for uniform design standards. One of the things that came out in our conversation was the fact that the community wanted a stronger visual identity. They wanted you to be able to come into Fort Bend and know, we are Fort Bend, and have it read as a cohesive whole. And so they have a desire for strong design guidelines that can be applied to new developments in the future. So this is an existing retail strip off of Fondren. And then here is how we've imagined it, that has an increased pedestrian zone so that pedestrians and people in the neighborhood can walk and also interface with the retail strip and the small businesses that are there. You see the sort of the natural native that helps to soften things. In this picture, in the new picture, you may not notice this, but we've actually taken out an entire row of parking in order to accommodate the events, in order to accommodate the pedestrians. The third opportunity comes within the residential waterways. And these are waterways that exist between the neighborhoods currently. And this kind of fits in with the trend within Houston, where we're claiming some of the infrastructure that's behind neighborhoods and claiming the back door between neighborhoods and using it as an opportunity for more walkable areas that residents really can use. And so we've imagined it with more lighting, in the increased areas for walking, biking, streetscape amenities like benches, as well as trash cans, stuff like that. The fourth opportunity also speaks to what one of the things that the residents also pulled out was a need for career, technical, and vocational training for the current residents and the kids who live there, as well as the older residents themselves. I saw an opportunity within Ridgegate. There's a large lot next door to Ridgegate Elementary School, where you really could create like a neighborhood center that is walkable and bikeable, that would provide, part of it would be programmed as a career center that residents could be able to get to and use for a resource. So this is the current adjacent lot to Ridgegate Elementary. And then this is what that would look like if part of it was possibly programmed to be a career center. The fifth asset, and for us within our team, we've really understood this to be the critical asset within the Fort Bend community, because you already have passionate residents and you already have partnerships that are pushing this project forward. But it's the Edison Arts Center, and currently they have the Edison lofts that are being built, and the Edison Performing Arts Center that's being built. And so we saw that as an opportunity to start, that's sort of our idea of the lily pad, but basically an opportunity to start partnering with people and also pouring in assets and resources and funding to make the Edison Arts sort of an arts corridor and an arts district. So currently what you're seeing is there's an undeveloped lot, and there's actually multiple undeveloped lots across the street from the Edison Arts Complex. And we've basically imagined this as a part of an entire plaza. So this would be looking from Edison Arts Complex. You see an opportunity for food trucks and pop-up art shows that include local artists, small retail, and the space that we see as being an area for food trucks as well as farmers markets and pop-up art shows, really could also be an intermediate step between now and community is able to get like a full-fledged grocery store. Because as most have mentioned, they're food deserts that don't currently have grocery stores. So what we're seeing here is basically West Fuqua, where the Edison Arts complex is imagined as a complete street. And it would have like protected shelters, protected bike lanes, landscape medians and buffers, as well as really sort of activating the public realm. So you have outdoor dining, outdoor sales, and across the street, you would have like a plaza where you have festivities, food trucks, and that pop-up art show that we were talking about. And this is, again, just kind of like a more detailed rendering of what West Fuqua Street could look like. And so now I'll defer to our transportation expert to talk more about some of the bicycle plans and the thoroughfare extensions that are going to be happening through the Fort Bend district.
One of the biggest assets in that from a transportation standpoint is the infrastructure that's in place. One of the things that we're seeing that with all really in this area and all over is that commuting patterns are changing and people's needs and desires are changing, largely due to COVID, but other things also. But this area has some really great connections to the rest of Houston and throughout the community. You know, you have Fondren, Fort Bend Tollway, Rockwall, and Fuqua as you know, major connections in here. And so there's an opportunity to take these assets, because really these are enormous assets that can be repurposed to really blend better with the community needs and the changing of the way that we're living and working. We've noticed a shift, you know, in a lot of ways that people are working from home, and there's just a need to kind of repurpose some of these infrastructures. So we wanted to really take it and build on what the city has already put in place, and that is, you know, their city bike plan, and we wanted to try to put a little more reality and priority to those. And so you've seen some of that on the concept plan for Fuqua, where we've added bicycle lanes and better transit shelters throughout that street, and it just allows for a lot safer environment for everyone to use those connections. So I think, can you go to the next slide?
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is really just showing the thoroughfares, and one of the strategic ideas is to take and you see the dashed red lines going down Fuqua and extending that all the way down to Blue Ridge, and taking those and really getting those ramped up on the priority list to make things happen along those corridors. So it could be a really economic development opportunity. So, but the idea here is that we need to better match and soften the streets and the infrastructure, and adding more of a you know, bicycle and pedestrian safety connections throughout this whole area. You know, I think that's the primary ideas from a transportation standpoint is really getting those bicycle facilities and some more safe pedestrian amenities added to this area. Connections up Fondren also would be another priority to extend the bicycle system through there. But again, it's all about the repurposing of this giant asset that we have, which is all of this right away. You know, how do we use it? Do we really need all of the lanes out here? And I think what we're finding is in a lot of cases we don't, and we can repurpose. And so that's from a transportation standpoint. I think that's, as the team talked to the community, I think that's kind of where we landed. I'll turn it over to the next speaker.
So moving forward, we have some actionable partnerships and implementation recommendations. So here's we'll start off with some incentives that we think could help strengthen the design guidelines moving forward.
Because uniformity was a concern that the Fort Bend community expressed to us, we've researched some ways to establish design standards in the absence of zoning. We provide details of the process and steps for these ideas in the appendix. A few ways that we think you should consider to establish design standards in Fort Bend are deed restrictions. You would need a petition by 50% property owners to agree that these are not enforced by the city, but rather by the community itself, usually through the HOA. Incentives. Projects funded through the following mechanisms can be required to follow specific design standards in their projects. TIRZ, Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone. Usually established by the city, there's already a TIRZ 25 in Fort Bend. CIP, Capital Improvement Program, also managed by the city. This program funds public infrastructure and can require design standards for streets funded through this. Other economic development incentives such as tax abatements and permit assistance can also be used to require developers to follow design standards. And partnerships, working with other entities that can fund infrastructure and economic development such as Houston-Galveston Area Council. They have funding programs for communities, but one of the most applicable here is the Livable Centers program. And in fact, they have a Livable Center study starting in Fort Bend, August 2021. Participating in this study and getting your community ideas in this study would be great because HGAC assists communities with implementation once a study is completed. Harris County Transit Authority has funding for landscaping and improving underpasses at Beltway 8. The City of Houston stormwater incentive policy can be used to encourage developers to consider aesthetic stormwater improvements as part of their developments. And here we have a diagram detailing the steps on how to begin the deed restriction process.
So moving forward, we have some actionable steps that we think Fort Bend can take in terms of getting guidelines set in place that'll further guide the future development in this community. Number one would be to identify task force and find the champions within the community who want to push it forward. The next would be to create a master work plan for this task force. And then Sunday Streets really gives you the opportunity to test out some of these ideas that we've been talking about, where you can shut down the street for a day and then have activities and festivities all along the street and have cyclists, pedestrians, and just pour out into the street and see what that's like. And then lastly, looking at public-private partnerships for beautification. There are a number of organizations that we've previously pointed out that have funds for beautification. And then we'll be able to give you guys, the Fort Bend community, an appendix that has more detail on a lot of these organizations and steps that we've talked about. And that brings us to questions. Do you guys have any questions or comments?
We're going to take just a few brief questions and comments, maybe like one.
This is Donna Thomas with Super Neighborhood 41 and also a community leader in Green Valley Estate as Civic Club. I have a question about all these designs that came through. You guys got our paperwork from our major meeting. Is that correct? When you came up with these designs to help connect our community as far as the parks, the bayous and the creeks. Do we have the study of those different areas as far as pollution and flood? And
So-
how to, go ahead.
Really, so what we're working from is the Fort Bend Action Plan, as well as the community workshop that we participated in with the Fort Bend residents 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that was 2 weeks ago. Also, I saw your format with all the sticky notes. A lot of that
Mhm.
came also from a big meeting from Willow Ridge High School, correct? When
So
when
the
complete community,
sticky-
when complete community came to us, we had a big meeting with all the stakeholders, including our stakeholders and different businesses. They all came together with the city of Houston. I don't know if Tanya's still on the phone. She can kind of.
Yes, Ms. Donna, that the information on the slide that Danielle showed you with the sticky notes, all of that information came from the meeting on April 10th, the workshop that was held. But
Okay.
the residents that were at the workshop on the 10th, they shared the information. So some of the information came from the previous engagement meetings that we had, but these were responses from the people that attended the workshop.
Okay, I got you.
Okay.
But it's basically still coming from the ideals that we've had from the very
Yes.
beginning.
right.
Structure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
a good way to think about this, because we have read through the action plan, is we're building off of that and any feedback that we get. So we're building off of your action plan and all of those priorities that have already been identified.
Mhm.
And then moving forward and trying to imagine actionable steps and what this really in a physical way would look like.
Okay, and I see y'all very focused on the Fondren and the Fuquay, but there are other. I know you guys put Ridgegate in there for
Mhm.
the empty lots that were there in their area. There are other, like you said, there are other areas that we need to identify when you talked about the beautification, but I didn't see what areas were you talking about for beautification. And I'm thinking, have we identified those areas?
So we're not complete in identifying those areas, and really, so in the design process, this is just the pre-design phase. As we
Mhm.
get more information, we've realized we need to also look at Chimney Rock, since Willow Ridge High School is near that area as well. But this is not the finalized. We would only be looking at improving these areas.
Okay, and then another question would be, as far as our grocery store goes,
Mhm.
talked about our connection for the Beltway and the Tollway. We did at one of those meetings identify that one of the locations for a store would be along that toll road, or the Fort Bend toll, that
Bend.
connects behind Ridgegate and in between the Fort Bend toll, and on the other side you got Chase Wood and South Crossing.
Mhm.
We felt that particular zone, when he was talking about connecting people, that would allow our other revenues to open up some of those areas where they closed off the Beltway and the Fort Bend toll, whether to get connections for all those homeowners to be able to come into certain areas, and then also be able to use some of that property over there for development, especially a grocery store. And I think the one that we talked about was the Harvest Market.
Right. And we're aware of some of the conversations that you've had. But like, yeah, so this is in no way like final.
Just want to
Yeah.
make sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank y'all for your comments. Charity, if you could give a brief comment. I just want to reiterate, these are the beginning stages of design. We heard your concern when you wanted to come to the table at the beginning, and this is in no way a complete master plan or all of the answers. And we will continue these conversations in your respective communities with your planners and the design teams, hopefully to help bring these ideas to life. We identified just initial corridor and hubs to start the visioning of what these things could look like. This is in no way the complete answer, but we want to thank the design teams for taking a stab at beginning to identify these visions. So Charity, and then we will move on to Magnolia Park, Manchester.
Thank you, Danielle. I'll try to be brief. And then first, I want to just apologize for any noise you may hear in the background. I am at another event, so I tried to step away. But first, I want to thank you all for the time that you took, the investment that you made into giving ideas. We know that this is a comprehensive approach. We know that you are not here to provide the community with all the answers, but you are to give a footprint, to give vision so that the community can go back and put in the work with your guidance and assistance. So we know that you're not going to recognize every piece of property available. You're not going to recognize every park. You're not going to do that, but you have given vision and insight. And so I just want to thank you so that the communities can get to work and utilize this if they care to. But I do have a question. You gave, I think, HCTA and Houston Galveston Area Council, you gave them as providers of certain funding or information or funding opportunities. And so, but you said it, but it wasn't in the slide. So I am asking if you would to send what you said, what those entities, those organizations, what they do and how they can aid so we can go back and utilize them. If Houston Galveston area provides funding for what is it that funding can help us with? If Harris County Transportation or whoever it is that you found gives funding or grant opportunities to aid and assist, if you can provide that, then we can take that and do the work to apply, to inquire, to solicit for their support. And I just want to thank you again. And then if you could provide, if you would, the participants from the community with the presentation, with the slides, and with that information, we can go back and get to work. Thank you.
We've planned to provide that to you all, as well as with an appendix that has all of that information. Because of the format of the presentation, we didn't want to overwhelm you with all of that information, but you'll have an appendix that tells you the process and the application steps.
Thank you.